Hello, Unfiltered Waters family, and welcome back this week. We are so excited to have Michael Andrew on the podcast, and we were particularly excited because Michael was in Nashville, so he got to come to our podcast studio, aka Todd and Katie's guest house, and we got to interview him in person, which was so lovely. It was so good to see him and catch up. Michael is a Olympic Gold Medalist, the 4x100 medley relay from the Tokyo Olympics. He is a 12-time World Championship medalist from both short course and long course worlds. And he first made waves at just 14 years old when he turned professional and has made waves in the swimming community ever since. He does a very unique type of training called USRPT. We talk a lot about that type of training, along with his dad being his coach for so many years of his career and what that relationship is like. His family is so important to him. So we talk a lot about how they have supported and encouraged him over the years along his journey. We talk about surfing, about his faith, about his friends and family, how he's maintained incredible balance, what he's learned over the years, and we address some of the biggest misconceptions that he feels like people have about him, his style of training, and his family. And it's really, really powerful. He's so open and honest about everything. He is wise, so mature beyond his years at only 24 years old. And I think you will really enjoy seeing this side of Michael Andrew. So without further ado, here he is, and please enjoy.
This podcast is a Cannonball Media production.
Element's mission is to restore health through hydration and recovery. Something that Missy and I have really been focused on is to ensure that we are hydrated prior to starting our day.
Yes, something that I would do is have my electrolytes after my workout. And what we've really been realizing is that when it comes to replacing lost electrolytes, preparing ahead of time is much better than chasing them afterwards. So we've been enjoying our element about 30 minutes before we go into our workout or exercise.
So my favorite flavor, although it switches on the daily, is currently grapefruit.
And mine is orange salt because I'm having it in the morning and it's just so reminiscent of an amazing glass of orange juice.
We've got a special code for you. It's Unfiltered, which gives you a free gift with purchase, which is an 8-flavor sample pack. So you guys can find your favorite flavor as well. Drink up.
If you follow Katie and I at all, you know that we are obsessed with cold water immersion or cold plunging. My experience began as early as 12 years old when our moms would go to the closest gas station after a final session at a swim meet and fill up the hotel bathtub with as much ice as they could carry so we could recover and be our best the next day.
Now, thanks to Edge Theory, this experience couldn't be any easier or more available. They have created a cutting-edge, all-in-one portable ice bath and hot tub that can cool the water to 37 degrees or heat it to 105 degrees, all within 2.5 hours. It also has a state-of-the-art filtration and sanitation system, keeping the water clean and ready to use 24/7.
For me now, cold water immersion drastically increases my energy, especially when I need a boost halfway through the day after chasing around my 2-year-old all morning. And I've really been focused on lifting, and it really helps reduce my muscle soreness.
For me, it's about the mental clarity in the morning. It's the first thing I do. I love getting something really hard and challenging done out of the gate, and that dopamine rush is amazing.
So click the link in our show notes to learn more and get your Edge Theory cold tub today.
Michael Andrew, welcome to Unfiltered Waters in studio.
Yeah, I'm stoked to be here. This is awesome.
So
Which is
fun.
Also your bedroom.
Also our bedroom. Yes.
Very comfortable bed, by the way.
Thank you. So for context, for people watching, listening, Michael flew in late last night.
Yeah.
Your plane almost crashed.
It was probably I don't think I've ever experienced turbulence like that. I sent the video to Todd, and you can hear the rest of the plane screaming behind me. Like gnarly, but we got off. We're here. We're fine.
Yeah,
so,
you're here.
God is good. I'm alive.
You're alive.
Slept well. Trained this morning. We're ready to go.
Awesome. Yeah, and you're prepping for people now listening. You're prepping for the Pro Series in Knoxville and Doha. Mm-hmm. So how are you feeling? How's that going?
Pretty good. No, everything's nice. I feel like once 2024 hit. And I got to day 2 of 2024. I was like, okay, I'm ready for the year. I will say the very first morning of it, I was like, oh, it's here.
It's here.
Like, this is crazy. Because I think ever since Tokyo kind of ended, you shift your focus so quickly to the next big thing. And that's, Paris. And so, no, but we're feeling good. Like, training's been really consistent. Travel's we got a lot coming up, and we'll touch on it, I'm sure, throughout the pod. But I'm excited to we can give a little bit of away in terms of like the training we're doing, but we've changed some things and we've added some new stimulus, and I'm very excited to see, at least in Knoxville and throughout World Champs, like how my body responds to it. Because I'm definitely putting on a lot more power, and I'm looking physically bigger. I'm feeling stronger, and so it should be a good season. Yeah,
so exciting.
That's the plan, at least.
So much to look forward to.
Lots.
Are you, for Doha, I know you've been super vocal, which is so exciting, about setting your goal of medaling in all 450s.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that?
It's good. It's one of those things. So I think coming off of, this was 2 years ago in Budapest, I became the first I think, athlete to win or to medal in 3 strokes in the single worlds, at least in those 50s. And that was something I didn't know I was the first to do. And even then I thought it'd be cool. Like I wanted to do it in all 4, but I just wasn't. I was kind of ill-equipped. And this world's, you go into it thinking, okay, like maybe there's like a more open chance, like kind of a gap, but it's not going to be like all the fast guys are going. And that's what's really exciting to me is like, I want to race Cam head to head. Like I want to go face to face with these guys, and I'm going to have to beat Hunter head to head in the 50 back, and he's defending. He wants to go back to back. He even texted me. He's like, dude, you can't beat me. Like I need to go back to back. I'm like,
I love that.
I'm like, come on. And we're so tight. Like it's awesome. Like we're homies.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think that's the beauty of the sport and where we're at now is like we can be vocal with those goals. And especially for me, like I love to swim and I love to swim fast. And so being able to have all 4 of them, it's kind of a fun thing. And I don't know, that's what was weird to me looking at, having a world champs Olympic year, especially before the Olympics. It's a little weird. But in my mind, I see it as an opportunity to train and to race, see a new culture, be around like excellent athletes. And that kind of sets me up as a great stepping stool for trials in June and then God willing Paris. So
for the pro series, you said you were looking for some of the stimulus to kind of play out. Are you able to share what those things you're looking for?
Yeah. So the biggest changes we've made, and so obviously everyone knows us as like pure USRPT, right? And so everything's very pace driven, very specific, a lot of repetition, and that's remains the same. Like the principle that will always be there. But we've started increasing and adding gym stimulus. So I'm lifting a lot more during the week, which, takes away some of the specificity because there's breakdown. And then I'm also doing a lot of CNS, so like central nervous system fatigue stuff in the pool, which is your GMX7 or like a lot of people know as like a power tower or like your power work. And so this is something that I had never done before this year. And I've noticed a huge gain already because the adaptation that's come from it has been so quick, and my shoulders are stronger. My body can carry more load, more weight, more power. And now it's just a matter of being able to execute it on the day on top of all the other stroke changes. Cause I feel like we're constantly tweaking little things here and there. So yeah, I'm very excited, and I feel like, I don't know if you guys have felt this throughout your careers, like you become so in tune with your body and how like a minor adjustment feels, even if it's just like a shift of the wrist, that the adjustments we have made now feel so money that I just got to execute.
Yeah.
And so that's the next step.
And okay, so Michael, for those that are listening that maybe don't understand what USRPT is, can you just give like a very broad description of what this is? Because this is a type of training that isn't the most common that you see in this sport. And it's something that you have received some interest in is a word that I will use. So if you can explain it just so people that don't know what it is get a better idea of what exactly it is that you do and how it's different than maybe the more quote unquote traditional style of training.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say very, very simple, like layman's terms would be specificity over the quantity. And so when we swim, everything we do, and I think of it like this, our body and our brain codes every movement like a computer. And so if we can do something over and over and over, you create a neural response. And if you're going to be coding movements that are drills or kick or long, slow, short, fast, you kind of jumble the data that's being put into the brain. And so our thought process behind it is if you just do everything fast and specific in a certain like technical way. When it comes to time to race, there's no guessing. There's no guesswork. Your body's just like, okay, I've done this 1,000 times. I just gotta
created those neurological pathways.
It's all
and
neural
it's
pathways.
just,
Yeah. And so the training sets, they start to look very monotonous. They become the exact same things, a lot of repetition, short rest, short work. And I think it can be hard for an athlete mentally to show up to a training knowing, you're doing the same sets every day for a year. For me, I personally love it because, and I think it varies from athlete to athlete. Some things work for others, and I would never ever say like, this is the best way to train for everybody. I think it's up to the individual. If you believe something's going to work for you, you're right. Like that's how your brain works. But yeah, so I think very simply put, USRPT, ultra short race pace training is, I'm trying to think like, how would I break it down even easier? Is like, it's basically you're racing every single day at a fraction of what the entire length of that event would be, in hopes that when you come to race, you don't have to think about it. Your body does it.
Something that I think, and I had this misconception right when people were talking, I mean, this was years ago when you started doing this, of like, basically if like you didn't hit your race pace, you were done. Is that still the case or no?
And that never was the case.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say you're done. You get to a certain point where if you miss your mark, you would have to rest a cycle. So say your goal is to hit 30-25s at 100 pace. That would be like a typical set. If you get to 12 and you miss your pace, so you're trying to swim a 1 minute 100 freestyle, you're holding 15 seconds, you go 15.5, okay, that's too slow. The idea is you want to send a response to your brain and say, okay, bad. You don't want to code that time because it was too slow. So you're going to rest a cycle. A cycle would be the length plus the rest period. So it'd probably be like 30 to 45 seconds, maybe a minute. And then you go again until you fail.
Okay.
And so every fail would be, okay, this is a stop point where you're essentially communicating to your brain, okay, we don't want to code that. We stop there and then we start fresh. And so the idea is you only essentially are depositing times and velocity or technical aspects that are going to help you swim the time that you want to. Yeah, which is honestly, it's funny because people think like they make it so much more confusing than it needs to be. I think
that was so well described. Like I needed that described.
And that's like
that.
You look at like, I don't know, you feel like I see this in every sport is human nature. We want to make things so much more complicated or difficult because then we think, oh, it's like smarter or more intriguing. It's like, it's really easy.
It's like, here's the time, so go the time.
Yeah, just go the time, rest a little bit and do it again. Like, okay.
And when that was presented to you, I don't know when exactly it was presented to you, what attracted to you? What attracted you to that versus the traditional training that everyone does?
Well, so there's a story that goes along with this. So in 2009, so I was 10 years old. So I started swimming when I was pretty young, like 7, 8 years old. We were part of the local club team. And then really quickly, my dad, he saw a talent. So he came to watch me swim one day and he saw me training. And my sister also was swimming at the time. And so we were both like just naturally gifted. And he would be good to tell this, but he called my mom and was like, hey, drop whatever you're doing. Come watch Michael swim. It's so clear, like God's given him a gift to swim fast. And that's kind of when our journey started because we realized, okay, like what do we do to maximize? And I say we a lot because I'm not the only one swimming.
You're
like
a team.
It's a team effort. And when I stand on the podium, we sacrifice so much, or my parents sacrifice so much in order for me to do what I do. But that's when we started to seek the science. And at the time, USA Swimming had what was like their science board, and Jonty Skinner was on that. And so we reached out to Jonty because my heritage is South African. My parents were born and raised South African. So we're like, we'll reach out to the only South African we know. And I remember Jonty, we picked up the phone and the very first question he asked is like, how big is your wife's hands and feet?
What?
The weirdest question ever. And my dad answered it and he's like, okay, cool. Can you be here this weekend? So we drove to Colorado Springs, met with Jonty, and we started working with him a little bit. And then we met with other coaches and other people around the world. And just like, we wanted to learn everything. So fast forward to 2009, we were doing these things and it's very hodgepodge, very like homemade. We're like, okay, we have no idea what we're doing. My dad swam in South Africa. He swam with Wayne Ridden. So very traditional, like grind the yardage, like pound, destroy your body. And he hated it. He hated swimming and he didn't stick with it. He ended up going to Special Force Navy and playing rugby and stuff. And so he decided like, we want to find something different because he just didn't believe in the way that things were traditionally being done. And so we did what every other coach does in USA Swimming. You go through ASCA and you go to the convention and you try and learn something. This year was especially interesting in that I think Dr. Carlisle, I don't know if he was gifted or he was speaking, but he had the opportunity to invite a guest. And USA Swimming was like, okay, like invite whoever you want. And so he gave this opportunity to Dr. Brent Russell, who, rest in peace, passed away a few months ago. And, you know, Brent was the reason we coined and started USRPT with him. And he was the scientist who had founded it in the 60s. And so he came and spoke at ASCA in 2009. And my dad, it was the one talk he really wanted to go to. And we're in Fort Lauderdale, I think. And so all of us could like care less. We're at the beach doing our thing. Like we're hanging out.
Get tan
yeah. I'm
and
like,
surf.
why are we even here? And so he goes to listen to this talk and it's titled The 7 Myths of Swimming. So he like debunked a lot of things that are very touchy subjects in the swimming world. So he spoke about altitude training, like the traditional model, like drills and skills, like a lot of things like tools and stuff like that. And you could hear a pin drop in the auditorium, my dad recounts. And so immediately after that talk, you know, everybody kind of poo-pooed it off and be like, that's ridiculous. But my dad went straight up to him afterwards and said, this is unbelievable. Like, will you mentor me? Can I have all your notes? I want to train my son using this method. Wow. And Dr. Russell, he's very monotone, like tough to work with. He's a hard ass. But
like many scientists.
Oh my goodness,
so
100%. And we had such a tough relationship with him, but man, he loved and he was so smart. And so that's when our relationship with him started. Mm-hmm. And then in 2011, we started like the terminology USRPT. So yeah, that's kind of like the birth story of all of it.
Wow. Yeah. Michael, you were so young.
Yeah.
So
when
young.
all that was happening. I mean, I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes and, you know, for, again, our listeners that don't know, you have already been through so much in this sport and you have a lot of people that have voiced their opinions about it. You turn professional at 14, you do a unique type of training. Your family is incredibly close, which is so beautiful. Your dad is also your coach. I know your mom and your sister are heavily involved as well. And it's so wonderful to be able to sit here and hear your story from you and what this experience is like from you, because even just you telling that story, your passion in knowledge and learning, like even at that young age, it seemed like you were just so eager.
Well, it wasn't me. Like that was, and it was funny because you said, and I love that and I appreciate that. It's like, I realized too, that came later. I think that internally came later for me. But my parents were the ones who saw something, and so they instilled that vision, even though I didn't see it for the longest time. And then there came a point, and there was like a shift in the career where I was like, okay, if I want to go the long haul, if I want to make it to the Olympics, I want to do any of this, I'm going to have to take ownership. And so that was a huge kind of shift in my career. But early on, I was forced into a lot of things without knowing what it was going to do for me.
Interesting.
And a lot of the times I probably hated it. But then looking back, you're like, oh my gosh, like...
What led you to trust?
I think the same thing that would lead any child to trust a parent is there's a consistency in the love that they showered over me and discipline. I think I was equally punished as much as I was unconditionally loved. And I think that was what was really important. And I think what created the individual that I am and my sister are today is, you know, when we stepped out of line and we were disrespectful or we, you know, didn't act a certain way, we were punished for it. You know, at the time you get spanked or you get time out or whatever it was. And I think that was really good because it just created a well-rounded individual. And then as we got older, you know, I was surrounded by people that were older than myself, and I was put in rooms or situations that were more difficult than I could handle, and I'd break down, and then my parents would be like, okay, like, this is what happened. How do we deal through this? We talked through it and we figured it out. And so I think it, you know, and on top of going pro, like you said, I dealt with a lot of different stressors and challenges and levels of negativity that I had to, it kind of forced me to grow up really early at a very young age. And so that was kind of the blessing of it all. And the fact that we did everything as such a tight-knit family, you know, it gave us the flexibility to move and kind of be on the run and travel and to have those experiences. So I, you know, was very blessed. Like, I don't think there's not a lot of families that could do it that way. And I don't think I recommend it for every family to operate at that same level. I think it takes a very unique setup. I don't think, like, I don't know. I think it's important for families to be very involved and for athletes and kids to trust the love that their parents have for them. But then there also comes a time where it's like, there are people that are smarter than ourselves to help delegate. And over the course of my career, I've had to do that myself, you know, like hiring an agent or, you know, working with a strength and conditioning coach or talking to a scientist about nutrition. Like, we don't know it all.
Yeah.
And I think that took us a while to figure out. Yeah.
So was this always something that you wanted to do? Or
Always.
in your words, was it something that was kind of forced on you at first that you grew into?
Yeah. And that's such a good question. I love that, because I think that's the funniest misconception about people that look towards my life and my career, is they felt like I was this bubble boy being, you know, puppeteered by my parents. And it couldn't be anything farther from the truth. I remember 2008, I think I had just turned 9. I was like maybe 8 years old. And we were watching the 2008 games. I think you guys were swimming there as well. Yeah, you were swimming there.
I was, yes, I am the old.
12 was your first, yeah. And obviously that was like Phelps's games. And I remember watching him win 8 medals. I don't even think I'd been swimming for a year at that point. But something in me, and I remember sitting in our basement, Aberdeen, South Dakota, on these like weird beanbag chair things, thinking, oh my goodness, like, I'm going to be there one day. And I had no right to think that. Well, you know, like, I think my parents just, like, the way they raised me, I was just like, whatever, I could believe I'm capable of anything. And so that's when the swimming journey started. And I look at that and being like, okay, like, I'm going to swim. Like, I love swimming. I'm going to be there. I didn't know what my talent was. Whatever. Like, my parents started to instill that after they saw how much I loved seeing what was happening on the screens. And that was pretty cool.
I feel like that's such a good lesson for parents, because parents, I know we all get asked this, like, you know, when do you push? When do you just, you know, take the back seat? And I feel like it's when the child voices that, like when the child is like, I want to do this. This is my dream. Then it's like, all right, all in, provide them all the resources, all the support.
Right.
But like that voicing has to happen first.
Yeah.
It can't be the other way around.
Yeah. Well, and I think you have to give them the opportunity to voice it. So I think there's nothing wrong. Like, it's a good, like, I don't know. And I'm far from raising a child. I have no idea what it's like.
Let me tell you all my wisdom in the last 2.5 years.
It's literally like, okay, like, I've been dating a girl for 5 months. It's like, I love her, but child, no.
We got time. We got time.
And so I imagine, you know, I look at like what we do. It's like, I was encouraged to do everything. I played every sport. I tried hockey. I did basketball, soccer, football. I kicked on our high school team and did drawing one so that I could, because I was homeschooled. You know, like I had all these experiences and the opportunities to like make a decision for myself. But if I wasn't pushed into those settings, I maybe wouldn't have, you know, been able to figure out or land on swimming. You know, who knows? And so I think that's kind of important. And as a parent, like, every journey is so different. It's like with any relationship, there's going to be ups and downs. You're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, and it's exactly like you said, too, that it's not one size fits all.
No.
I mean, every family is different. One of the things we've talked about a good bit on the podcast so far is this kind of idea of balance and having swimming not be the end-all, be-all. But when your whole family is so involved, do you feel like that balance is important to you guys, or is completely thriving around swimming something that aids you?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's like a give and take. So it's interesting. I feel like a lot of people would look at my lifestyle as too balanced. Like I do so much. Like I golfed 18 holes on Sunday before flying here. And like most athletes would be like, what the hell are you thinking? Like that's a terrible idea. And maybe it is, but at the end of the day, it's like, you know, to me, swimming is such a, like, I don't view it as something that I have to do. It's a gift. And so it gives me the perspective on like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice everything, obviously, to be excellent and to do it. But I think having made an Olympic team, and, you know, granted, I haven't gotten an individual medal yet, but it's like winning a gold medal in a relay. It's like, I've achieved a lot of cool things in the sport, and I've broken world records and world junior records, and I've got a lot of medals. It doesn't make life better. And so,
Oh, say that again.
yeah, like it literally, if anything, it just gets harder, you know, and not in a bad way. I think that's a good thing. Like that's why sport is sport, and why the winners get paid more, type of thing. But I couldn't imagine going my whole life being so hell-bent on winning a gold medal and then having sacrificed 20 years not doing the things I enjoyed, creating relationships, like, and I think the only reason I view that is because I was fortunate enough to have mentors that illuminated that for me, because I'm not gonna see that as a 15-year-old, and to recognize, okay, like my value and my purpose in life isn't just swimming. And so yeah, it's a pretty wild perspective, and it's something that I have to continually teach myself, because I forget pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we all do. I mean, it goes into, you know, you turn pro at 14. Obviously, Missy said this, a lot of people had opinions and thoughts and all those things. Like, I have just been in awe of you over the years before I even knew you. Obviously, my husband Todd has just been in awe because he loves USRPT, and like he was like, I remember we saw you at Golden Goggles. He was like, "Are you going to introduce me? Like, I need to geek out with him over USRPT."
So
I'm like, "Sure," but I do want to talk about how you do that. Like, I know that was a weakness of mine. I cared so much what people thought, and I know you make it look easier than it is.
I've had some dark days, and so is what. Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, the first step for me, and there's some negative, like, and everybody on here, like, if you're part of the swimming world, you know swim, right?
Yes, it comes up a lot on the podcast.
Well, here's the thing: is like, I love swim. I'm very close with Mel and all the guys, and it's this weird, like, my career, I wouldn't be as known if it wasn't for swim. Because when I was young, like, I had like 2 or 3 articles written about me every week. And so
I remember.
And that's how often you were breaking national age
group
records.
You
had like 300 national age group records. So let's be clear.
So I was like, yeah, I earned it. But it's like, damn. And so, you know, there was a lot of people wrote, and there was a lot of freedom to say whatever you wanted. And being naive, and like the family that we were like, oh, this is cool, we're gonna read all the comments. And
spiral.
It became bad quick. And so you become so, you know, you start to internalize all those words and those voices. And then the craziest thing to me, looking back at it, is I started to put so much value on these names and these people that I will never come in contact with. And let alone if they were face to face with me, they would never have the heart to say it to my face.
Yeah.
And so, like, this anonymity behind what they were saying, it had so much power over me. And I was like, why? And so I had to wrestle with that for quite a while. And I realized there wasn't really any point in trying to change it or convince them otherwise. Like, my mom would used to go in there and she would write comments as
like defending you.
Yeah, defending me, you know, like things like that, to try and, like, you know, hope I would see it and be like, oh, there's a positive thing. And over the years, obviously, it shifted to where it's like, you know, for every one hater, there's 4 supporters. So it's different. I think people have gotten to see my heart and to learn what our reasoning behind the way we do things are. And, you know, at the end of the day, I remind myself that if you don't have some naysayers to a degree, you might not be doing it right. Like, I feel like if everybody loves you, like, are you disrupting? And not that it's about being disruptive, but it's like, are you doing something that's truly leaving an impact
and transforming the game a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, I don't want to just be another competitor. I want to be someone that leaves a legacy behind in the sport, or even just in the way that I lived my life and carried myself, that people are like, oh yeah, like, he was different. And so that's kind of interesting. So I almost turned it now to where it's like a positive. So it's like, I'm excited when people say things because I realize they're just individuals that get more joy out of putting another person down. And ultimately I look at that, I'm like, that must be so sad.
Yeah.
And so I kind of shift the perspective of how I view it versus being like, oh my gosh, like
dagger
it's
to the
my
heart.
job
Yeah.
to now make them feel good about what I'm doing. It's like, no, I could care less.
My line is always, I hope your life gets better for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
a little
it must
grenade.
really suck. Yeah.
Chuck it over.
Literally. It's like, sit on that. So yeah, it's wild. Like, yeah, people are really interesting. And the human mind's so fascinating. I don't know. It's like, you meet some interesting individuals, that's for sure.
How, in those moments, in those darkest of days, when you're receiving this kind of criticism at the age you were and the age you are, like, let's clarify that you're still incredibly young. You act so much more mature than
Thank you.
than your age. How do you stay true to yourself?
I think the biggest thing is a consistency of doing it, and then also like the people around me. I think surrounding yourself with a community, whether it's your family or your close friends, that will hold you accountable to who you are. I think that's what keeps me most in check. I think being able to recognize that your value isn't tied to what another person says or what your performance is really important.
For good or bad.
Exactly. And because then it at least gives you the opportunity to fail freely. I think I used to show up to a race being so afraid to fail because what if someone writes something about, like, you know, like when I remember there was a year where I was like on a tear and I would break like 4 national records a meet. And I got to a point where I was like, if I break 2 national records this meet, people are going to write something negative about me. Like, that's not good enough.
Yeah. Crazy.
And it's like, how ridiculous is that? You know? And so, yeah, it's just kind of in that balance of understanding, okay, your value is not this. And then I think when I was about 16, 17, I started to lean maybe too far to like, oh, I just don't care, like whatever, like it doesn't matter. And that was a negative. And then my performance started to decline because I started to become lazy or complacent. And, you know, I had some weird years where I was like, you know, I leaned too far into the spiritual side of understanding, okay, oh, God loves me and swimming doesn't matter. Like, I don't need to win. I don't need to earn this or anything. But then I quickly realized by the time I was like 18, I was like, oh my goodness, like that's kind of unhealthy, to where it's like sport was given to me by God for a reason, whether it's to draw me closer to others, draw me closer to him, or to learn, like, how do I deal with these pressures and stuff. Like, these pressures aren't bad. These aren't negative. It's just, how do I face it and understand that, you know, I can go in there freely, willing to fail. And if I fail, I have to find a way to celebrate it and mourn the loss or mourn the hurt and then grow from it. Mm-hmm. And then if I win, same kind of thing. And that's what leads me into really a massive shift in my career was 2016. I remember showing up to Olympic trials, and we'll probably run on a bunch of tangents like this. But I feel like talking about all this, I start to think about so much, and I just like get fired up thinking about it. And 2016 Olympic trials was my first Olympic trials. I'm 17 years old. I think I was with Adidas at the time. And in my head, I'm like, oh my goodness, like I've got no pressure on me, but I really want to make this Olympic team. I swam really well. I ended up coming 4th in the 100 breaststroke, missed the team by maybe half a second. And I was pretty broken up about it. I was emotional. But I remember right after the race, the first thing I was crying, but I was kind of crying like tears of joy because my friend Kelsey Worrell at the time had just qualified for her first Olympics. And I was like, I'm so excited that she made the team because I knew how much this meant to her. And then I went to like being sad for myself after. But
the roller coaster that is US Olympic trials.
Literally
crazy. But that whole year turned into something crazy because I ended up getting picked to swim short course worlds in December later that year in Windsor, Canada. And that meet ended up being really ridiculous. I was so unprepared. I felt like dropping out a week before. I added 7 seconds to my 200 IM. I ended up swimming Ryan's events, Lochtie's events. I had 2 IM, 100 IM, 50 breast. And I did all right in the 50 breast. I came 9th. Cody Miller just snuck in front of me. And then I had the 100 IM towards the end of the meet. And then at the time, Vlad Morozov had broke the world record like 2 weeks before me. I was swimming all right. Like I broke the world junior record. I got faster and faster. I was top seed going to semis. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm probably not going to win this, like whatever. And I remember saying a prayer, and this kind of ties into what we were talking about, and just, being able to balance that fear side of things and being prepared to race. Is I remember praying and being like, okay, Lord, like help me to show up for this race, excited, execute. But if I come last, I want to be able to celebrate this as an achievement. And if I come first, I want to be able to celebrate this the same. And I remember diving in the water, and I have what I call like a Holy Spirit swim. It's just like everything went right. I hit the turn. I couldn't see Vlad anywhere. And I was like, Vlad's going to probably break the world record next to me. I was surrounded by Shinri Shura and Diaceto on both sides. And I remember hitting the breaststroke turn and being like, oh my goodness, like I'm leading. And I turned, and I'm literally just like, I closed my eyes. I swim the last length, pretty much my eyes closed the whole way. I hit the wall, and I don't even turn around to look at it. I hit the wall, and I hear him say, world champion Michael Andrew. This was my first worlds ever. And ended up being the only gold medalist on the men's side, I think, from that worlds. And in my head, I was like, I unlocked something there in being able to show up not afraid to fail, because everything else was already such a mess. For the meet, I was like, okay, like I have nothing to lose. And I think if I can try and channel that mentality going into a lot of my events, I'm going to be able to swim free. And so I think, that's you look at what we face now as athletes, is everyone's so afraid to fail. Mm-hmm. But I recognize
athletes, the world,
everybody, the world everybody
right now,
yeah. And because it's funny, like failure's not really punished by anyone except for yourself. It's like an internal thing. And so I think if I was, if there was one thing I would leave to everyone watching, is like, don't be afraid to fail, because when you fail, you learn, and then you get better if you're willing to. So,
yeah. I mean, I think the thing I see people struggle with, I've struggled with, is like, it's the embarrassing factor. Like, it's not about like, it's like, oh my gosh, like what are people thinking?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the two collide. You've talked about people at 14, 12 years old, people were saying things. So it's almost like you got an advantage, putting in a positive light of the fact that you had to deal with that before you could even drive, having people having opinions. And now you have the fearing failure piece. But do you have that embarrassing feeling anymore, or is that gone?
I don't think, no, because I think I've been around long enough now to know, like I'm so confident in who I am, because I've had to kind of stand firm for so long that I don't think I could embarrass myself.
It's like your superpower.
Yeah, which is amazing. Yeah. And I think that's what's cool. And also, obviously, like throughout the years, you get opportunities, whether it's speaking engagements or red carpets or like all these things where like you have moments to embarrass yourself. Maybe it's not like I get more nervous for some of those things than I do racing now.
Yeah.
Because that's come so comfortable. It's so natural to us, because it's like, like I put my suit on, like I race, I do it every single day. Like this is what we do. Everything else is uncomfortable, and the more you do it, it's the same with swimming. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get in that spotlight. And of course you're going to have blunders, but I think that comes with the territory.
It reminds me of Carson Foster.
Yeah.
In the interview we did with him, we made fun of him because the word that he gave us is not actually a word, but it was unembarrassable. And we loved that. And this has been reminding me so much of that, as he had a very similar mindset of, I'm just here to do what I love, and I'm out here to do my best. And that's all I can do at the end of the day.
So good.
And it's so powerful, as Katie said, not just for athletes, but for anyone listening. Like having that fear of failure, I think, is something we all have. And having you share that perspective of, you are going to learn infinitely more from the hard races and the disappointing meets than you are from the ones that go great. They're not as much fun, but not everything is going to be.
Yeah, exactly. That's so good. That's so good.
So tell us a little bit. You talked about 2016. Walk us through 2021 a little bit. Your first Olympics, which incredible. You're an Olympian for the rest of your life. You walked away with a gold medal. But I know you talked about you finished fourth twice in your individual events. And after Tokyo, you took about 12 weeks to just kind of go in a hole, do your own thing. What was your thought process like after that competition? What were those 12 weeks like for you post Tokyo?
It was interesting. So I think there was a lot that happened between trials and the games, but coming off of the Olympics, I personally was happy. Like, I was like, okay, cool. Like, I did a good thing. I swam to the best of my ability. So I knew I didn't leave any stones unturned. And so I was able to kind of keep my head held high with that. And we were looking back, especially the very last day of the games, I had the 50 free and the relay. And obviously the 50, I came fourth. Had I been 5/100ths faster, I would have gotten a silver medal. And so, like, that's hard.
That's our sport.
I'm like, damn. And so really I look at that relay as such a gift. And there was a lot of other politics and like things even behind the scenes in terms of like the relay itself. And so being able to be on that relay and represent what being Team USA kind of stands for, like that was pretty big. And I don't come from being able to swim on a team. Like I've always kind of swum on my own. Like we've had a club when I was really little, but most of my career I've been solo, just me and my dad. And so it's kind of ironic that my first Olympic medal is a relay and I had to like share that moment, but also something beautiful because like the guys I got to share it with, I got to know so well throughout that trip. And that's something that, you know, for the rest of our life, we are that gold medal world record breaking team. And it was such a gift because I think had I left the games without that, it would have been a lot harder to cope with all the missed markers, at least in my mind, that I missed because I went in there, you know, number one in the world in the 2 IM, top 3 in the 100 breast and top 3 in the 50 free. I was like, okay, like I'm going to win 3 medals, and that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 12 weeks at home afterwards, 12, 13 weeks, the last thing I wanted to see was a pool. I was kind of not burnt out by the sport, but I think I had to do some soul searching and really figure out how am I going to now get on the horse to do this again for another 3 years, let alone like just get ready for the next Pro Series or World Cup. And we had World Cups coming up after, and I was like, screw it. Like, I am not going. Like, and I had everything lined up. Like, I had everything funded and good to go. And I was like, mentally, I'm in no place to do this. Like, I don't want to race. And so I felt a little defeated, but it was cool how there were a lot of blessings that came out of it because I took time away from the sport being like, okay, I'm going to go surf. I'm going to go out with my friends. I'm going to have fun on the weekends. Like it's funny. I ended up meeting this South African guy literally day one. So I flew from Tokyo. I think I went home for like a day, and then I went to Hawaii for 2 weeks with my sister. And it's kind of funny. I did teach like a little swim clinic like 2 days after. Well, no, scratch that. I flew back. I stood in my friend's wedding.
Oh, wow.
And then, yeah, I was so jet lagged, but it definitely got me back in good shape right away. Stood in my best friend's wedding, went to Hawaii, taught a clinic, and then I had like a week and a half on my own, just me and my sister and some friends. We surfed everything. We hiked, we waterfall, like did it all. Just like super nice to like unwind. And I remember coming home and I was like, I'm not ready for that to be over. So I just kept doing the same thing, just surfing, and got connected with new friends, new groups. And, you know, it was the first season away from the sport in a long time where I just didn't have to think about training, didn't have to think about anything. I was like, okay, I'm just going to like, and I stayed healthy. Like I wasn't doing anything dumb. I just was like, this is nice. And,
doing what made you happy.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was a lot of joy that came from it. And not a single interview, no articles, no nothing. And it was cool to see that. But then also in that time, like, you know, I think I was searching for something that wasn't fulfilling. And I didn't make any decisions that I regretted, but it was just something that I like, at the end of it, I felt empty. You know, it's like, yeah, this isn't really for me. So like, I need to get back to being dedicated to something. And, you know, my whole life leading up to those 12 weeks is like very regimented or planned or thought out, or like there's something we're looking forward to and doing this and this and this. And I think after that period, it gave me a really healthy perspective and understanding, okay, the grass is not greener. And I love what I do. Yes, I'm going to fail, and maybe I fail again, and maybe I fail worse, but I'm able to now knowing, okay, like I'd much rather fail in that setting doing what I love than trying to chase something else that I realize isn't going to bring me that fulfillment. And so it gave me the opportunity to get back. And it took a while to get even physically. Like I remember the first time back in the pool, I was like, this is gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt.
You're like,
so
what is
bad.
this substance around
Literally.
me? Like, I don't know what to do with it.
And I'd still been surfing a lot, and so I was strong, but it's such a different feeling.
It's so different.
Like you can't replace that.
No, it makes me think of Caleb. And when he was talking to us about coming back after his break, and he was super honest about it was rough, but it's so good to hear both of you say that and be like, yes, it was really hard, but we needed to do it.
Yeah.
Right. The break was important,
Yeah.
and it was able to get us back in a place that we were happy with.
Yeah. And doing it in a way where you're not near a pool, you're doing the things that you enjoy. Like I think some people, they're like, okay, like I'm, mandated break, I'm going to take this break. And if you're not maximizing the break, then you almost waste it.
Yeah.
And so it's cool to hear that you actually took the time and then came back invigorated and ready to rock.
Yeah. It's so important.
Yeah. I think another place that I want to go, you talk about, you've definitely disrupted and transformed the space on the training side, but you talk a lot on Instagram and with Todd and with us about the recovery modalities that you use. Would love to hear kind of your favorite ones and ones that you feel like make the most impact.
Yeah, there's a ton. Number one,
nice.
dream recovery.
I didn't cue that up or anything. And Katie gets the gold star for Wife of the Day award. For those also listening that do not know, Dream Recovery, who is one of our amazing sponsors, is also Katie husband's Todd company. As Olympians and elite athletes, Katie and I definitely understand the importance of sleep and recovery, but now just as a mom, as a professional, as podcast host, we still understand that sleep is so, so important. And we are incredibly thankful to one of our sponsors, Dream Recovery, for creating such incredible and impactful products that are science-backed to help you get the optimal night's sleep.
My favorite product is the Pink Dream Tape. I have not stopped wearing it since I put it on my mouth 6 months ago. It helps me fall asleep faster and gives me the best night's sleep I've ever had.
And for those of you that are a little hesitant about mouth taping, they just released mouth strips. So it's a little strip as opposed to the full tape. It has all the same benefits as a full piece of tape, but it's a little bit more of a segue for those who are a little bit nervous or are wanting to try out something. And I have been loving those.
So we've got a special code for you. It's code Unfiltered for 30% off your order and 50% off your first month subscription of Dream Tape. Sweet dreams.
Good night. Hey everyone, we just wanted to give a super special shout out to our amazing production staff over at Cannonball Media. We have an amazing team behind this podcast and we couldn't do it without them. So thank you so much for all of your help.
If you're looking to start your own podcast, they take care of everything from A to Z. So reach out to cannonballmedia.co.
Yeah, it's incredible. So there's a lot. I mean, we do so much. I think that's one cool thing about obviously being connected with you and Todd is like, Todd and I geek out over it. It's like I literally just got out of 45 minutes of sauna ice rotations with Todd. And like I love that stuff. Because I realize there's only so much you can do in the pool. But if you're not maximizing the recovery outside of it, like you can work as hard as you want, but you're not going to grow. And I think that's where a lot of athletes miss the mark, whether it's the way you eat, like how you're putting in your body, what are you doing to prepare. So a few of the things I work with, obviously Dream Recovery is really close to my heart. which is like our mouth tapes, eye mask. So mostly sleep functionality. There are training sides of it too, where like I'll lift with mouth tape on and you force like nasal breathing. Some of it's kind of scary.
Wow.
And you're like, I'm dying. And then HVMN is one. So it's a ketone shot. And so we shot one
I feel great.
before the start of this. And it's like, yeah, my brain's running. Like I'm fired up. So that I use as like a pre-workout. I actually just started working with Symbiotica, but it's a product I've been taking for years now. And they cover a lot of it is like liposomal. So it's like these gels where it's, you cover your vitamin C, magnesium, L-threonate, glutathione. They have stuff for heart health. They're coming out with liver products. So it's like, there's a lot of things we can do to maximize. And I think being able to take care of your physical, like you look at like the Tom Brady's, the Dara Torres, it's like, you don't do that and create longevity by working harder. You do that by working smarter and taking care of your body, because your body ages. It gets like, when I was 14, I could do 80, 50s pace, easy, whatever. I try and think about doing that as a 24-year-old. I'm like, hell no. Like, that's crazy. And it gets so much harder. And so it's one of those things like that, sleeping well. I work with a physio at home, like Bodywork's massive. My mom is my on-deck physio. So when we travel, I get massage, or you guys say massage, massage. Ice bath is huge. So I work with plunge a little bit. And then saunas are a lot of fun. So I sauna twice a week with my training. So really anything. And I think that's what's fascinating about it is, as an athlete, you figure out what works best for you. Some people love one thing over the other, and some believe something doesn't work. So it's very individual and up to you to figure out what works best for you.
Yeah. And you just listed like 5 different brands, right? And I think that's something that I admire about what you're doing in the space as well, is you're creating longevity for yourself in the sport, not only physically, but financially.
Thank
so
you.
tell us about, your content, all of that. There's so much that goes into the behind the scenes.
It's so funny.
It's not easy. You make it look easy.
It is not easy. And I wish I had a team of people to like take care of it for me. And those are things we're working on. But it's such a blessing, because I think, it's very different to the era that you guys swam through as well. Is like, we are such a socially charged era and generation, and it's hard not to get lost in the sauce in a way, to keep it authentic. And so that's my goal and everything, is when I post something, it's always, these are the brands or the people that I use and would use, whether I'm getting paid or not. Yeah. And I think that's what people don't fully understand, is like, sometimes you see like an ad post and they think, okay, like they're just making a ton of money off of it. It's like, most of my deals aren't revolved around money. It's around authenticity and what works for me, and how do I implement it into my routine, which I think is great. One, because I create a lifelong partnership with these brands, and then there's a level of trust that you can't create with another influencer, because everything becomes so transactional, because that's the world we live in today. And so I've been really fortunate to kind of create that space for myself. I don't think there's very many swimmers that are doing that right now, to be fair. And it's something that I try and beat over the head of my friends. I'm like, dude, like literally just post a story, like little things to start, like just get used to it.
Stuff that you like.
Yeah,
enjoy.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it's fun. Like I do think we're kind of shifting the landscape of what that looks like, and people are taking notice, and you see athletes like Carson doing such a good job, and it's fun. Like I love being a part of that. And I think too, it takes a little pressure off of the swimming and the performance. So, I have a little bit of freedom to be like, okay, like I'm not just an athlete. I'm also a spokesperson. I'm also, a teammate or a friend or someone with a knowledge that others may not have. And then that gives me the opportunity, because of the platform I've created from swim, to share and to teach and to kind of leave something behind. Because I think, at the end of the day, like winning a bunch of medals and doing cool things, that doesn't really leave like a legacy per se. I think what leaves legacy is the impact you had on the community you were involved in with what you do from that platform. And so I don't ever like squander that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I remember when I left the sport, I can't remember who told me this, but it's wild because it's like how I live my life is people aren't going to remember the times that you went or the medals that you have, but they're going to remember how you made them feel. And so I think for you to share that perspective and to have that perspective is so powerful and so important. And it's also really interesting too, you saying that having these brands and being a spokesperson actually took pressure off. Because I feel like a lot of
Usually
times it's the opposite.
Yeah.
People think that it would almost add pressure, but I think that exactly lends itself to what you're talking about. These partnerships are so authentic to you that you're truly feeling supported and you're using the products that you're using regardless. And so it ends up being something that's truly adding to your career and your person of who you are and how you feel valued and loved. And that's just really awesome to hear, especially as we're in this kind of NIL era where I think a lot of athletes, a lot of swimmers listening kind of need that advice on where do I even start?
Well, and I think an important thing too is understand what does the framework of any sort of partnership look like. And I think some athletes they underestimate their value to a brand if leveraged correctly. And so it's one of those things where, athletes are going to have to become more educated on what they can do. But, there's also some athletes who end up squandering that for others based on of course you can have a great name and stuff, but then you take all that money and you do nothing for the brand. That brand's not going to want to work with another athlete. And so there's a level of responsibility as a professional athlete to kind of take care of those relationships for the next athlete or for yourself or for your family, whatever it may look like. And so I've been, just fortunate.
Well, I think sometimes it's intimidating, right? Like when you see, a quote unquote influencer post all these videos, you're like, how can I provide that same value? And so did you always have that confidence with the ability, or if you didn't, how did you build that confidence?
Yeah. It grew for sure. I think the confidence grew as the numbers grew.
Yeah.
I also find that I'm the kind of athlete or just kind of individual. I'm the person where if I see someone do something a certain way and it has traction and it does well, not that I would mimic, but I learn very quickly. I'm a very visual learner. And so I can look at someone's feed and see how their engagement works and what their insights are looking like and say, okay, I need to figure out how do I translate this over to my community? How do I translate this to my audience? And what do I do in order to, make sure that it's getting in front of the right eyes? And you got to shift. It changes so quickly. Algorithms are changing, viewership is changing, censorship is changing. There's a lot of things happening, and it's up to you to be flexible and kind of evolve with it. While remaining true to what you enjoy. I just posted photos of me golfing in PGA West from Sunday. I got 300 likes, and I'm like, I have 215,000 followers. Is nobody seeing this, or does everyone just hate the fact that I golf? And
I'm jealous.
They're jealous.
I'm like, what is up, guys? Am I that bad? Or I was like, no. And so, I realized I got to sprinkle those things in there because this is real life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's people don't care to see that, And so it's they just want to see me do backflips off the pool or lunges and weird things. And it's yeah, okay, cool. I'll do that for you guys. But there's a balance to it all. And I don't know, it's such a game too. It's just kind of funny. You look at it, it's doesn't feel like real life. It's just you're kind of it's almost like you're in a dark room with darts in your hand trying to figure out what sticks. And sometimes it lands, sometimes it doesn't. But
that authenticity piece is,
Yeah.
I think, how to turn a light on in that dark room.
It is
if you
really
focus and lean into the authenticity.
And people notice when it's not.
Exactly. You are
You
going
cannot
to be
fake it.
so
You
much more
cannot
likely to hit
fake
the
it.
bullseye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're running a little short on time.
Oh, we can go over if you guys
I
want.
feel we could sit here all day. We have 3 questions that we ask every guest, but before Katie asks the first one, I want to do a final question before those. If there is one misconception you feel like people have about you or your family or your training that you can address right now, what would it be?
Dang, there's a lot. One misconception. I think the biggest and the one that most people fail to ask was this your desire all along? I think people early on, I think they thought when I went pro that I was making a ton of money. Zero. Like actually $0.
You were 14.
I was 14. I was getting protein shakes. Yeah. Like, let's be real. There was no money involved. There was no incentive for me to be like, oh yeah, like I'm going to chase this bag and give up NCAA and high school swimming. Like, why? My vision, and yes, I was young, I was 14, but you know, I knew enough to know, okay, like my desire is to become a professional athlete, to represent my country, and to win medals. Like I wanted this. And I think people thought that my parents were the puppeteers of my career. But it's quite the opposite. Like I was very in control of what I was doing. And if I wanted to stop, I could stop. But I think like you had said, like we spoke in the beginning, you know, as that child, I voiced that.
Yeah.
And my parents, they're crazy. And sometimes maybe too crazy, but they gave everything, 150% for me to succeed. And so they sacrificed a lot. Like we went into, I think we blew through like $1 million traveling because my mom had a business. She sold her business. Like we traveled the country. We drove everywhere in like a sprinter van type thing. It's like they sacrificed so much for me to race and to travel and to get in front of all these people and to have these experiences and break these records and all of this. And I wasn't making a dime for them, like, you know. And so it was one of those things that I think that's what, not that it upset them, because I think they had thicker skin than I did as a kid, is like, it was weird for me to think, okay, people thought my parents were like using me for something. Like, what could a 14-year-old give their parents when they could easily make a ton of money and do their businesses and like have fun, do their own thing? It's like nothing. They just did it because they loved me and they saw how much I desired to be excellent. And so they fueled the fire. And then when I was weary, like they helped me stay on the path. So
thank you.
Yeah.
For all of that. I know that these can be hard things to talk about and you handle them so well, but we so appreciate your vulnerability and how much you've shared.
Yeah. Well, life's such a blessing. Like I think to kind of gatekeep all these things, it's such a joke. Like, I don't know. If any of this helps one person, like huge.
And that's why
the
we
goal.
created
and
this
that's
podcast.
What's so awesome about Unfiltered Waters. Like it's, you know, even like and I've sat on podcasts too, and I'm like, there's a little bit of a like we're sharing an agenda. Like there's something we're trying to get across.
Yes.
But I love that even in your guys' title, like we're unfiltered. Like it needs to be unfiltered. Like life is tough, you know. Whatever, get over it.
Let's just be honest about it.
Let's just be honest about it. Yeah. Well, we'll have more conversation at dinner. Sorry, everyone else.
Part two next time.
Part two. Our first question of the three is, if there was one moment or memory that you can think of that's provided you the most joy inside the sport of swimming, what is that?
Oh my goodness. I'm not going to overthink these. I'm going to go first thing that came to my mind. So 2018, it was the year that we selected the team for like 2 years. Mm-hmm. So it was Pan Pacs in Tokyo, and then World Championships in 2019 was Korea, I think.
Budapest? Am I off on that? Probably.
I think. Maybe was it Budapest?
I think 17.
No, 17 was Budapest.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so 2019 was Korea. So it was because it was Asian tour. We were getting ready for the Tokyo Games, so we're all Asian. And I remember my very first race at the trials was 50 fly. And in my head, I was like, if I win, because I had to win. I couldn't come second because that wasn't guaranteed for non-Olympic events. And I was like going up head to head. This was like my first really big chance at making a long course international team. It was me and Caleb. And I ended up beating him in the 50 fly. And I remember tearing up as I was walking over to do my interview with Kira. I believe it was Kira. She was working with NBC. And there's this photo of me with like this pink background, just like with my eyes over my hand, like crying. Because I was like, I finally like made my first international long course team, qualified for Pan Pacs, but I also qualified for world champs a year later. And I had this huge, it was weird. It was like a sense of relief. I was like, oh, I can breathe. And I ended up having the most insane meet of my life. Like, I was untouchable because I think that like tension was broken with that race. And so that was like that was an emotional swim for me, and something that I think really shifted me, at least for that week of racing. And it's set up, and 2018 ended up being a big year for me. I won gold at Pan Pacs as well. And that was my first gold international long course. And I think I was named breakout performer of the year at Golden Goggles. And, you know, like, it just kind of
Cascaded.
Yeah.
That's
that was a big one.
Yeah.
All right. So second question.
That's a long-winded answer.
No, it's perfect. And we love the off the top of the head.
Yeah,
too,
no,
'cause
I
these are
actually
the hot
like
seat
that. Like,
questions.
go, say it fast.
So exactly the same thing, very similar, off the top of your head. A moment that brought you an insane amount of joy, happiness, but outside the sport of swimming.
Ooh,
Everyone does that.
I know.
outside. I think recently, this is a good one. Just throughout the holiday season, I think I realized just how blessed I am with the community of people that I have. And I don't take it for granted ever. But just where I am now it's the first time in a while. So like, my best friend and his girlfriend, I love them so much. Like, they're awesome. And then my girlfriend and myself, like, our core group is so close, and I would have never imagined this like 5 months ago. And so it's one of those things where it's like, just seeing all the people that have come into my life recently, and these are people that I know will be in my life for a very long time, is super special. Because I think growing up in those really young formative years, I didn't have community like that outside of my family. And I think that's where people look at us and be like, okay, like, who do you like, who's your people? Yeah. It's like, well, it's just my family. Like, it's pretty tight community. And so, you know, now that I'm older and more of an individual, and I have this community that I kind of created for myself and was able to grow in and to build, it's really special, because it takes a lot of pressure too now off of like the family dynamic, because we have a pretty crazy family dynamic. So I think that's kind of at least recently, I look at like the memory that brings me the most joy is I was sitting and having a cheeseburger at Hamburger Hut in Encinitas with my best friend Ernie and his girlfriend Becca. And I was reminiscing on the first day I met Becca, when my buddy Ernie was introducing me to her. So they had just started dating. And that was like a few weeks before I met my current girlfriend, Kendall. And I was just sitting there like, you guys, like, how crazy is this? Like, 5 months ago, I met you at that table. And now all four of us are like best friends. And we do all these things together, and we have all these like memories already. And yeah, so it's huge, because then I think of that and I'm like, the season I'm about to go in is just going to get crazier and crazier. And being able to have that is so special, because I know what I can fall back on and to celebrate or to struggle through.
Have support.
Yeah.
Don't those moments give you such hope? Like, I feel similar. Like, we moved here not even a year ago. Now we have a podcast. We've become super close. Like, you just feel like in such a short period of time, something miraculous and amazing can happen.
Yeah.
And it could be one decision, one choice.
Literally.
And so it just gives you such like excitement for what's ahead.
Yeah. It's so special. And I think too, being able to position yourself, like, allow for that to happen.
Yes.
Is so important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like interesting when you're positive, when you're open, suddenly these things happen.
Yeah, literally. How crazy.
It's amazing how that works. Yeah. All right, final question. You know what this is going to be. What is a word that encapsulates you, or what you want your year to be, or something you're working on?
So up to this very moment, I've been trying to think of something and I haven't been able to. But when I turned to my side, I saw the unfiltered waters, and I think my word would be unfiltered.
Love it.
And not just because of this influence or what we've been talking about, but I think I've never been one to live like within like my bubble or state. I've obviously always been very unfiltered, but I think I've come into a season where I have a lot of people around me being like, be careful what you say. Like, think about what it's like, yeah, of course I'm going to think about what I'm saying. I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
But like, I don't need to be so filtered. Like, I should be real. It's like why we're here. Like, be real, be vulnerable, be honest about the struggles. But also, like, if you want to say something that, you know, it's going to scare some people, like, as long as you're being honest and you're being kind and you're being forthright, like, you shouldn't be afraid to say it. And I think that's really special. And so maybe I think that's like, that would be my word, unfiltered.
I think that fits you perfectly.
It does.
Yeah. So
That you were meant to be our guest on
Yeah.
Unfiltered Waters. Can I say the word that kept popping into my head while you were talking was just evolve. Like, I just
That's
feel
good.
like the whole theme throughout everything we've been talking about is you just keep pivoting and evolving
to.
in every aspect of your
Yeah.
life. And I just,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So impressive. I mean, Michael, we're just so, again, thankful to have you here
Thank
and
you.
for you to share your story. And it's so wonderful to hear it from you
Thank
and
you.
to talk about your journey and how much you've already accomplished, how much more you're going to
No, I appreciate
accomplish.
it. Well, I want to add too, like, it's so, and I was thinking about this flying in here. I was like, and I was talking to Todd about this, and I was like, you had such a positive influence, and Katie as well, but you especially, like, you were around racing when I was a baby. And I remember showing up to my very first pro series. And as I started to kind of come into this world that is professional sport, I didn't feel very welcomed. And you were the first person to welcome me. And it was something that my parents noticed and I noticed, and something that I wanted to model as an athlete growing up. And so I saw your heart and how big it was for athletes, and especially myself as someone who hadn't been able to prove anything. And I couldn't give you anything as a 12-year-old, as a 14-year-old. But, you know, and this was back in the Grand Prix days, before a pro series, you know, we'd show up to Minneapolis. And I remember it so vividly, you being on the other side, the far side of the pool. And I had walked in with my dad, and you noticed me. And I think you had only met me once before. I'd maybe taken a photo with you, or like we had talked, like, and I was such a like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed like little child. And you came running over to me and gave me a hug and gave my dad a hug. And I was like, you don't even know him. And I was like, what is this? And even my parents are like, this is ridiculous, you know? And so like those little moments were so impactful in my life, and allowed for all the negative and all of that to kind of be drowned out, because I recognize like there's still people with big hearts that recognize like we're just people wanting to swim fast. And so that was something special. And it's cool to like be here now after not seeing you for like 2 years and get on the podcast. So
that means the world to me. So thank you so much for saying that. And I'm so glad that was an impact I was able to have, and an impact that you are having on so many others. So it means the world. Michael, thank you so much for being on Unfiltered Waters. And we're off to dinner. So everyone else, see you next week.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Thank you so much for listening and watching Unfiltered Waters. We are so grateful for your support. If you could please hit that subscribe button on any of the channels that you're watching, and maybe even give us a rating or review, we would appreciate it so much. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon.